You're listening to Gnarly Metal After Hours on gnarly101.com. I'm Kelly Thomas, and I'm joined today by my beautiful friend Leah Miller, who is here talking with me about her time working in radio in Phoenix. And during the break, Leah, you and I were talking about a number of Phoenix bands that went on to have some national success. Let's talk first about the Gin Blossoms.
Well, I know you were just playing Toad the Wet Sprocket, and that was the first tour that Gin Blossoms went on with, was them and Toad the Wet Sprocket. They've been lifelong band buddies, I suppose. They've even toured more recently together. The Gin Blossoms were a local band in Tempe, playing 5 nights a week at Long Longs in the Sun Club. And, we had them come by. If you have claims to fame in your life, I was the first air personality to interview them. And KASR, our famed radio station, was the first station to play them. And then the first commercial radio station was KUKQ. So my time period is associated with the Gin Blossoms in the times that I was working in radio in Phoenix, and I wouldn't trade that for the world. And I admit I have a gold record for it. Nice. Actually, 2.
Yes, that's excellent. Congratulations. Who else did we talk about? There was another band now, and it's slipping my mind.
Well, from your 80s days of metal, you mentioned Flotsam and Jetsam, but we were talking about the Refreshments. There was Dead Hot Workshop. There was Gloratone. There were so many bands at that time. It was just such a hotbed. Every night at Long Longs was a great night to see a band, from Strangelove and Spinning Jenny, and there was just so many. I apologize for the ones I'm missing, but Feedbags, Sidewinders from Tucson. It was an incredible time in Tempe music.
Well, as I was saying to you off the break, I'm the oldest of 4 children. My youngest brother, there's 10 years between us, and he went to Arizona State as well and graduated from Arizona State. And 2 things. First of all, he was there just about the time that the Gin Blossoms were on their rise to fame, and the Gin Blossoms are still one of his favorite college bands today. And then you mentioned Long Longs, but I remember going there when we were in college, and then when I went for my brother's graduation from college, Long Longs was still there.
Oh, absolutely. They knocked it down, and they never built something in that exact spot. It's actually now a little garden. Well, a year ago, it's like a little garden. It was so strange. They knocked it down way too soon before the build happened in Tempe.
The big kind of overhaul they did for Mill Avenue, right?
Yeah, that's a hard topic for me.
Understood.
Doug Hopkins is rolling in his grave to what they did to Mill Avenue.
Yeah. You had a chance to interview a number of pretty talented musicians. Are there any bands that stand out among others as being perhaps a favorite interview or an entertaining interview?
Oh, yes. You may recall, or as friends, I was a massive INXS fan, still am, and I was so blessed to not only Atlantic Records offered me an interview with INXS, and they couldn't guarantee me which member. And I just please let it be Tim Ferriss. And he called that day, and it was Tim Ferriss. And then maybe about a year later, I was able to interview Michael Hutchence. So without a doubt, for me, that was top. Absolutely.
I can see why. That's incredible. I had a chance to see INXS actually when I was in high school. So I want to say maybe it was 1984 when I saw INXS in concert. And this again is just when they're kind of starting their rise.
Oh, yeah. That's a great time period. That's like the swing going into Listen Like Thieves. Incredible time to see them. If I can add, I'll just say that probably my favorite person I interviewed was Jim Ellison of Material Issue. Rest in peace. There was just a nice vibe that the 2 of us had that made it very fun to interview him.
I think interviewing is an art in and of itself, and I'm still on a learning curve with it. But
oh, no, you're doing great, Kelly. Don't say that. Put out to the universe. You are amazing.
Thank you, love. Appreciate that. Appreciate you. And I have admiration for you and the way that you've done it, because you've made it appear so seamless and effortless.
Thank you. I really enjoyed when I was doing Leah's Local Zone on KZON. I felt that I had some really excellent interviews in that period. it was Lawrence Zubia, again, rest in peace, of Chimeras, Pistoleros. He had a tumultuous life, and I took on that interview just saying, let's just start this from the beginning and let's take it as your life progressed and how things happened. And I often think of that as one of my achievements also.
Excellent. As far as music is concerned, Leah, are there any other genres of music that people might be surprised to know you enjoy listening to?
Maybe perhaps what you play on your show. I wouldn't say that I'm a heavy metal fan, but I have a certain love for, and I don't like the use of hair metal either. I like the term melodic AOR rock.
Yeah.
That there's still a catchy chorus, but it's got a heck of a great guitar solo in there. So most people would probably, my bread and butter for many years was the new music, alternative, whatever you want to call it. And of course, I have knowledge and a huge collection of that. But I love skinny tie music of the early 80s and a little bit of that melodic rock when, yes, they did have big hair at the time.
Yep. And I'm glad you said that because I think that sometimes the glam metal gets a bad rap.
And it was great. And that took some skill. Those guitar solos and the vocals are incredible.
Agreed. I think it started to get a little bit over-processed towards the end of the 80s, like 89, 90. Some of it just began to sound too similar. But I think the early stuff has more of a, more of a cutting-edge feel to it because it was new at the time. And their choice of hair.
Well, right.
There's certainly some room to have fun with that, but I don't want to take too much away from the music, and I guess I'm biased, but...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I will share. We all have like our bucket list of bands we want to see live if you're into going to concert. And being that I moved in 87 to Arizona, a lot of the Canadian bands that I love, of course, we're not touring the States. So I'll just share that a band from Prince Edward Island, Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, called Haywire,
Oh my God.
are back together on occasion. And they are playing in Ontario in May, and absolute bucket list. Never got to see them in the 80s. I spent the bucks and bought the VIP, and I'm finally going to see Haywire from Prince Edward Island in May of 2025.
That is so cool.
Great. I hope you can play them on your show sometime.
Absolutely. I'd be glad to, more than glad to play them on my show. I started going to concerts when I was 15 years old, and it was something that I just fell in love with from my first concert. I really enjoyed doing it, and the desire to go see concerts has really never left me. It's shifted as I've become older, especially when I look at some of the ticket prices. I feel like I have to be a little discerning. And
I just looked at one today and said, nope.
Yeah, but it's certainly a different time and place, and I'm grateful. I had a friend of mine who I worked with on Kilo, my friend Justin Time on, and I had asked him, how many concerts have you seen in your lifetime? And he said, well, I think I've seen close to 150 concerts in my lifetime. And he asked me, how many have you seen? And I had to pause because I've never actually calculated how many concerts I've seen.
I have no idea. Do you know?
For me, I think I'm over 100 as well. I don't think I'm at 150. I think I'm probably in the neighborhood of 115, thereabouts. But I had to go home and make a list because I didn't know at the time he asked me.
Did you remember everything?
No, it's just every now and again I'm like, oh, wait, I saw this band in concert, so I can add it to my list. I have another friend of mine who, back when we used to get concert tickets and you would get your ticket stub, and so he saved all of it and actually put together like a scrapbook with all of his stubs, and I was like, that's a really clever idea because I reached a point where I was like, all right, I got to get rid of these.
Yeah, I mean, they're a fun collection, absolutely. My numbers are a little closer to 500, or maybe more. On KUKQ, I was, again, still in college, so I was sort of the young person amongst radio professionals. So they had lives, and if they needed somebody to announce a show, we'll send Leah. I was in my young 20s going to every show that came through Phoenix. So I wish I had a full count, but I just don't. And there's bands now that I've seen 20, 30 times. So I'd be afraid of my count, actually, Kelly.
I get it completely. So certainly there are some bands that you've seen more frequently than others. Are there any that you have not seen that you would like to see in concert?
Well, besides the aforementioned Haywire,
right?
The remaining bucket list that I never got to see, and again, we lost a member of this band, but they still perform on occasion, is a band called Cutting Crew. I never got to see Cutting Crew. After I see Haywire, that'll be my number one wish.
I hope they come to your neighborhood. Hope you have a chance to check them out. It'd be very cool indeed.
Right.
Okay, we'll be back in just a moment. You're listening to Gnarly Metal After Hours on gnarly101.com. You're listening to Gnarly Metal After Hours on gnarly101.com. I'm Kelly Thomas, and my guest today is the lovely and talented Leah Miller. Leah is an on-air announcer, and she is also an author. So we're going to take a few minutes, Leah, and talk about your book. The name of your book is Bay Window.
Correct.
You had mentioned an interest in creative writing when you first started in college. Is your interest in creative writing one of the things that inspired you to write this book?
I've been author in my head probably since I was 14 years old. I like to joke that the only courses in college I ever got A's on were creative writing courses, not my broadcasting course. So writing is something that I adore. When one becomes adult and life and stress and pressure, sometimes it's hard to write in that time period. But there was a point in my life where I was comfortable enough and it flowed out of me. And that's how Bay Window happened. People ask me all the time if it's autobiographical. It is fiction. And I like to say that the three main female characters are a combination of who I was at that age. So the main character maybe has traits of me, but I also joke that she's a little more innocent than I was. And I think that's where I become the other characters also.
One of the things I noticed in your book is your reference to music, which I absolutely loved. I'm going to ask again, this is not necessarily a question pertaining to it being autobiographical, but the music, the artists, the bands that you mention, are they all favorites of yours, or have you included some other bands or musicians who maybe you kind of only like a little bit?
Well, the main characters, it's a romance. It's chick lit. So the male character certainly has music taste that is not my taste, but certainly anything that our main female character, our heroine, is definitely I wanted to reference every band I possibly could that I loved.
Yeah.
Now, I don't need them suing me, so I never really found out if it was legal to mention true names of bands, but I have presented my book to two of the band members that are mentioned, and they weren't upset and they have not sued me.
Yes.
So that's good. We'll keep it that way. I loved being able to write about the music of that time, and it is not a surprise that it is set in 1987 to start, because I wanted to highlight that time in music.
Do you have intentions of writing another book in the future?
I will say my fan club of 3 have asked me many times to do so again. It's always on the back of my mind, and I'm settled into a really happy state in my life. So I think the time might be coming. I think I wouldn't, how do I want to say this? My life wouldn't be complete if I did not at least write something about my time in the Tempe music scene. So that is what's on my mind.
One of the things that I've noticed about you from your Facebook pages is there is a furry family member that you may be asleep as we speak.
He is. Yes, absolutely.
And his breed is Corgi.
Correct.
And I'm wondering, you've always had an interest in Corgis, or was he just someone or something that came to you at that time and it was love at first sight?
I wasn't aware of Corgis. I know they're all the hip fashion, but I was married at a point in time in my life, and my ex-husband wanted a Corgi. So that was in 2000. So my first Corgi was Wicket, like the Ewok. And even when I got divorced, I got Wicket. I'm a huge dog lover. I've had many dogs in my life, but it was then that I fell in love with the Corgi breed. And then as a single person, I found out there was a cactus Corgi rescue in the Phoenix area. And then I have had 3 3 corgis since. So Elvis is number 4, who's laying by my feet. And he is also an adoption from Arizona. He's made the move to Arizona from Arizona to Michigan. He loves the cold weather, and he's 15 this year. And I will mention that, when they write the little biography about you, on the back of Bay Window, it says she lives in Phoenix with her Welsh corgis, Gracie and Elvis, and a lot of vinyl records.
Perfect. Leah, if I remember correctly, you also have an interest or had an interest in cars.
If you can see the video, you can see my former race car behind me. I've been away from that. Once my parents passed and going through divorce, running a race car is not something one does on their own. And of course, the funds to do so. So that was something in my past. But for a while, I was the drag racing DJ on KZON. And I actually got some press for that because of the uniqueness of it. And at the time, I won a Super Chevy race, which was a pretty big race. So, yeah, I got newspapers and such covered that. So I have a little bit of press from that time period.
For the benefit of our listeners who can't see the picture of your vehicle, would you care to describe this vehicle?
Red 69 Camaro SS with a 396, although it had the emblems for a 350, which I loved because those who didn't know what was under the hood thought it was a small block, but she wasn't. And we called her Big Red, and it was a wonderful time for my family and I to do that together before my parents passed away. So I credit that for being that time that it brought us back together when I was in my 30s.
Now, when it came time to sell this vehicle, did you...
Maybe one of the worst days of my life.
Now, did you drive this just in a racing environment, or did you drive down the street as well?
When I originally purchased it, it was street drivable, but when you start racing, suddenly you want to do more and go faster and use slicks. And you'll get a kick out of this, I used to host a Friends trivia night in Tempe. Yeah. And every Thursday when Friends was on, I would go to this bar, I think it was called Maloney's, something like that. And when you do promotional events in radio, you kind of make more money doing it that way. So it took me maybe a month of doing Friends trivia, and I was able to buy a trailer in order to trailer my race car and not drive it on the street anymore.
Did you travel outside of Arizona to do any racing?
Yes, absolutely. I went to Palmdale, California. There was a racetrack there, and I raced in Las Vegas once.
Nice.
The track is still there in Phoenix. It's there was some time they thought it was going to used to be called Firebird, then Wild Horse Pass. Now it's actually called Firebird again.
Well, I'm going to return to your book. It occurs to me that I did not give you the opportunity to tell people where they can find your book.
Oh.
Where can they go to find it?
It's print on demand or Kindle, so you can just go to Amazon and order it. I don't think it's more than $10. I haven't looked lately, but shouldn't be too much more than that. And you can either download it for your Kindle or purchase a actual copy, which shout out to an old friend of mine who was able to transform it into, I will say, make sure you get the print's really small, but you can just order it on Amazon.
Excellent.
I maybe sell 2 a year. Mm-hmm. So much pleasure. It was cathartic at a time where I had lost my parents.
Oh.
There's things that help us, Kelly, through our lives. And if writing about our own lives or having a fictional story in your head that has to come out, it can all be cathartic in things we go through.
Right. And just kind of take us away from the things that sometimes can be, I don't know, day to day.
Oh, adulting.
Yes, exactly. Have that be something that brings you joy and to be able to share that joy with other people.
It's truly about a young lady working in college radio and working with other college radio students. And it definitely draws on my experiences at both Eastern Michigan and Arizona State. The characters that we met in college radio or in commercial radio, because there are characters out there. And it's also just really that coming of age type of book that you would expect of someone going through college, but also having a boyfriend in a band.
Ah, yes.
There you go. There's the hook, right?
Right. Say no more.
And all set in 1987 in Nova Scotia.
Well,
And clearly, I've never lived in Nova Scotia. So I spent at least 6 months to a year researching the area to be as authentic as I could be to the clubs that were there, the restaurants they go to, the college that they attend. So that was fun doing the research too.
yeah, I bet it was. How long did it take you overall to write the book?
I want to say 3 months.
That's it.
Yeah, once I got going, I was going. But the editing was like at least 3 years.
Of course. Yeah. Let's return to radio for just a minute because there's something very special about you in your radio career that I would like to share with our listeners. This doesn't surprise me at all, knowing you as I do and knowing your level of skill and ability as an on-air talent. You received an award in 1999. Can you tell us about that?
Quite a shock. I had no idea this was coming. I was working at KZON. We talked about I was doing the local music show. I was also hosting a all request show. I called it Leah's Drive-Through. The drive-through request show, I was really able to flex the format a little and play things maybe that you didn't hear in the normal rotation. So one night I came into KZON and went to my mailbox, and there was a copy of the New Times, the Phoenix New Times, with a note indicating that I had won Best Radio Personality. I was there by myself. I can't remember if I called my mom at the time. I don't know, but I was shocked. If you ever read the New Times or any of those types of local music papers, they would have like the audience choice and then the reader's choice and then the like writer's choice. So I was the writer's choice, and the reader's choice was Howard Stern.
Well,
So, I can't say that the readers voted me in. It was the writer's choice.
well, I'd like to think that you had a slightly higher criteria for choosing you to receive that.
Yes, they wrote lovely mentions of both the Leah's Local Zone and the drive-through. And even in my work today as an academic advisor, all I can do is just be as authentic and empathetic and enthusiastic. And if you know me, I'm usually quite giddy and really I like to just still call myself a teenager about the music I love. And so I think that came across when I was on the radio. But sometimes it's theater of the mind. And you and I talked about this. There are some things that you didn't particularly care for. There was an artist we were playing on KUKQ that I really didn't care for, but you would have never known it because I actually overemphasized pretending, again, theater of the mind, that I did like it. And that's a good actor, right?
Right. And I think that's a key component in some of what we do as being on-air announcers and on-air talent.
Yes.
That and some of the amazing people that we've worked with. I mean, we've talked about our college classmates here and their journey.
Everyone professional, so professional.
Yep.
Whether they ended up in the industry or not, we met so many amazing people along the way from Arizona. I'm sure I sound biased, but,
It's okay to be biased, I think, though.
Okay, good.
When I got away from college radio and started in corporate radio, some, not all, majority of the people I worked with were fabulous. But every now and again, you'd get this pain in the ass coworker, and I just used to scratch my head and say, this doesn't fit in with the vibe.
Right.
It doesn't fit in with the rest of the people. How is this person here?
Radio is just such a passionate industry. You really had to care a lot about it. And it's, unless you were a Dave Pratt or somebody like that, or a Howard Stern or whoever, you didn't make a lot of money in the game. That was not what radio was ever about. So you worked with a lot of passionate people who were as nutty as the classic classic WKRP in Cincinnati show.
Great show to this day. Still entertains me. And I think you're right. Yeah, there are just plenty of people who brought their level of passion, and you could hear it on the air when they were doing what they do. And that level of passion, I think, might not be present for everybody who decides today that they want to do on-air work, especially if you're somebody who doesn't have a background in radio and you decide that you want to be an announcer and your entry into the market is voice tracking.
Sure. I was at the end of that. So, Kelly, I think you probably had more, like, voice tracking really wasn't happening yet. Having retired from radio in 2000, as I mentioned, I made the decision to leave radio on my own accord instead of being fired. But things as far as like utilizing computers and tracking and recording your shows was really just starting to happen. So I can't really imagine being in that world of radio.
I think it has become a very different world. And I don't think that synthetic voices or AI are going away. I think they'll continue to be a component in the radio industry. My hope is that as the technology becomes more efficient, that humans still have a small role to play. I'd prefer we have a large role to play, but
of course,
section for a human voice. I'd like to believe it gives people a sense of community and connection, and it allows for, just like what you were saying, some authenticity. It allows for people to be real and have that exposure. And I've said on a number of occasions, the work that I do here, the work that we do at gnarly101.com, our shows are all live. We have live jocks.
Fantastic.
And what that means is the show is nearly perfect. And that's how I phrase it, because there are times when shit happens and I think, okay, well, I've got to work my way out of this. But having spent years working in radio, where the only way to work in radio was to be live on the air, feel like I'm well versed to do it. I prefer perfection, but I don't think that's ever going to be a thing just by virtue of the fact that I'm human. But I have an opportunity to do it, and I have an opportunity to speak with fabulous people who have had such interesting careers and also have had the chance to be in radio and do it in a way that's slightly different than how it's done. I've said before, and this is going to sound biased, I like what radio was. I'm a little less excited about what it has become. So if we get the chance to do the live radio thing, I feel like we're turning the clocks back just a little bit, creating something that's slightly different than the majority of radio, especially terrestrial radio.
I just drove back from Kitchener, Ontario to my Michigan home, and I found a college radio station, Calistoga College, I believe, in Kitchener. And it was the music they were playing was fabulous, but all they did was have drops in between. I heard no live disc jockeys the entire drive back that I could hear them. So it's unfortunate that because radio can play automatically now and they don't necessarily have to have live personalities. And that hurts you and I in the heart, right? Yeah.
Leah, we're really close to being out of time, believe it or not. Hours have just flown by.
I talk a lot. Thank you for listening.
Oh, it's my great pleasure. It always has been. Do you have any closing thoughts, any closing words before we wrap things up here today?
I still love that power of surprise in radio. So I still listen to radio quite often in my car. I still listen. I've been getting to know some of the Detroit stations and what have you. I don't enjoy it as much, but I'll listen to radio online, like Gnarly 101 is. I'm putting it on my online now to listen. This is what still gives me hope that people can still discover new music this way. I go to concerts and I'm like, how do they know about this band? Right? And I know you got your TikToks and everything else, but I'm still, show me a newspaper article about a band, or let me hear about them from a friend, or a station like yours is so powerful. And I'll say like something like KWSS in the Phoenix area, still offering that chance to hear new music is something I'll forever be passionate in.
I want to say thank you to you, my dear friend, for being here.
Absolutely. It's been a blast. I haven't talked about these things in a long time.
I have had a blast as well. And I thank you for spending some time with me this afternoon. I hope we might be able to do it again another time.
Oh, just say the word. I'll talk your ear off and Elvis will sleep through every bit of it.
Oh, good for him. Keeping you company, keeping your feet warm.
I will will mention another melodic rock band that I hope that Kelly will play on her show. They were actually truly my first concert was Andy Gibb, but he was lip syncing. But my second concert was a local Detroit band called Bittersweet Alley.
Okay.
And they are that same sort of hair metal, whatever you want to call them. They are one of those should have been huge hit band that Detroit fans know. A song called Time to Move by Bittersweet Alley is something you need to play on your show just for me.
I would be more than happy to do it. So I've got Haywire and Bittersweet Alley, Time to Move. I will put them on next Friday for sure, and I will mention you as well, Leah. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thank you. I got my request in.
Woohoo! Thank you, Leah. You have been listening to Gnarly Metal After Hours.